Hey guys, I'm going to explain how your automotive vehicle works. We're going to start with the body of the car. That's where stuff is held, like wiring, pipe, and tubing, hoses, and stuff like that are all stored under there. First of all, we'll start with the fuel system. And the fuel system, you can't. It's up here. The fuel system would be right here. Right here would be a fuel tank and a fuel thing. Then it would be like this. Goes up to your either you have a carburetor or you have a fuel injection system. If you have a carburetor, it will be mounted on top of your engine. And it would be running to your engine, and then you would have a throttle there. But if you have a fuel injection, which is in more modern cars, it would be right here. The fuel injection would go into the pump compressor, compress the fuel in there, and then of course in your engine, that's where everything happens. And it powers your crankshaft, which would have a timing belt that runs a camshaft. Or it would have accessory belt part where it would power the power steering pump, power the air compressor for the air conditioning, or water pump, and stuff. That would be right here and stuff. All more modern cars have power steering nowadays and stuff. Then you have your exhaust system, which vents the exhaust gases out. It passes out of a tubing thing called Mando or something like that. I think what the name is. Your exhaust Mando, I think. No, exhaust manifold. That's it. And now we're hooked into there, going into another small box called a catalytic converter, which turns harmful gases into harmless ones, like carbon monoxide. They're on all new modern cars. Then it would pass through another big tube called a muffler. Then it would they're out of the car. And then if you have your engines vary on these cars. Some have V16, some have V20, some have inline 4. Inline 4, it has either 4 that are straight across, which are often racing cars if they have that 4-cylinder, or they would be on an angle like this. No, that would be a straight up. And if you have a V8, a lot of times they'll either, around the big hot rod cars, they'll be like this. There would be four pistons on each side. The pistons are what helps you. And there's 4 things on it. First of all, you have your combustion state, or you have your air intake stage that would come in. It would stop right there. It would come in, and then it would have your right here. You would have your intake stage. Make sure it's still recording. Perfect, it's recording. And then you have your intake stage, which sends air in from the outside of the car, and then you would have your compression stage, where the piston would go up, and then you would have a combustion stage, which a spark plug in one of these would fire, and all of them would fire, and then it would force the piston down, then the exhaust valve opens, and then it goes out through the pipe, through your catalytic converter and the muffler before there. Now, if you were to have a straight pipe car, you would still have a catalytic converter, but you wouldn't have this thing right here. It would just go straight out your tailpipe. And trust me, it would probably be loud. So outside you would say stuff like that. So if you didn't have a muffler, if you had a straight pipe, it would just go like this. I think it would pass out of here like this, out of here, then it would go straight out like that. There would be no muffler, the muffler noise from the engine, or from the exhaust. That's what your muffler would look like. That's what your muffler would look like. That looks funny from my camera. That was what it would look like if you had a straight pipe. You would still have a catalytic converter, but it would go through there and it would come out. The catalytic converter does not muffle any noise. It just muffles. It just turns it into carbon monoxide. This is what it would look like. Then this is where your manifold would be, right here. Then it would run, the exhaust would run out of here and out into the waste gas. Unlike this one where it would look like this. Go through here like that. That's what is on most cars, stuff like semi-trucks. People will try to. And if your catalytic converter would break, you wouldn't have, you consider kind of a temporary straight pipe because you wouldn't have a muffler. But if your catalytic converter breaks in half, it would just be loud because there would be nothing going through your muffler. So you never want to have a catalytic converter break on it. Anyway, if you have back up into your car, you have a transmission. It can be either manual, which you have to use a clutch and then you have to keep shifting in the gears, or you have an automatic shift with clutch to it. And this is where this is. That either goes to your front wheel or rear wheel, and if you drive a pickup truck, you would have, like, for example, this car was an automotive, like, off-road vehicle, like a Hummer or any other, or off-road truck, big truck. You would have going to a transfer case, and then you would have it go like this. Then it would go to your wheel, go to a box where the wheel goes and stuff. But and then it would go to the front. But if you were just rear wheel drive, you wouldn't have these right here. You would just go straight to your wheel, back wheel. If you're front wheel drive and you didn't have this one all be here. This would just be for your front. And then you would and stuff. You wouldn't have a transfer. On cars without four-wheel drive, you do not have a transfer case. You just go to your front wheel or back wheel. No need and stuff. And then you have your power brake, and then back to the engine you have a vacuum chamber which powers your power brakes if you have them. And old cars you never did, so you had to put the force on your pedal just to push it down. And then this is where here's a power brake booster with going to your vacuum resonator back there. And inside the car you have two sensors out here for your airbag. And if you work on cars, you never want to touch wires with yellow electric tape, yellow connectors, or yellow wire coating. That's your airbag system stuff. That would be right here. That would be under dash right here. Stuff. Then you'd have two airbags, and you could have side airbags, something like that. And then you have a battery. You have your alternator. Two is also powered by your accessory belt. The only thing that's powered by your timing belt is your camshaft. That helps you. And the camshaft. So on older cars that they never had a lot of these stuff, they never had catalytic converters back then. And then they have then in older cars you never had your power steering, they never had power brakes, they never had catalytic converters. They had a different filtration system that didn't really help very much. They never had an automatic transmission back in the 40s and 30s. It was just an old car. But they didn't cut the wheels were the stocks anyway. So that was power brakes. And back then, before they had hydraulic brakes, it would be hooked right into your time. It would hook right to your timing. It would be hooked right here. The brakes and stuff like that. The brakes would be brakes in the transmission without any hydraulics. And the clutch pedal would be also in the transmission. And then we'd have a little handbrake that sticks up like this. It wouldn't be that thick, I suppose. And then you would have a little thing to release it. That's what it would look like in your older cars. You would have up top. You would have, and before they had electric starters, they had a little crank that would hook to your crankshaft or flywheel, and a flywheel first. And then I would crank. You would crank it like this. But you have to be careful because they could break your wrist. Because then they came out first with the first set of starters, and those starters looked like this. They were hooked on the back, and they were hooked by the training. And then you would have instead of having an ignition key, they would have a pedal that would come up underneath your floor, and that was done like that. And when they first started coming out power steering back in the 50s, they had linkage steering, which were a steering thing that was hooked in one end and your steering arms on the other, and then I would go back and forth like this. I'll show you what they look like. They would look like this. They would go like this. Then they would hook right, and then this would hook to your framing, and the hoses would go up like this. And this was the modern thing. And then these would go to your linkage arms right here. So, you see that I got that on camera. Stuff. You don't have and stuff. That's what a starter would look like. Up on top, you had this is what it looked like, and then you had another lot of things in the 60s. You had your power steering here, like this. You touch your gearbox. You would have a pinman arm that comes out the side, and you would have holes that hook to your power cylinder, which has put on a piston, stuff like that. But then back to the modern cars, now the modern cars will have a lot of new features, like they would have power windows, power steering, power brakes, airbags on all sides of the car and stuff like that. They would have power windows, everything. And a lot of the newer cars, like they would have a windshield wiper in back. And like the Saab would have a windshield wiper on their thing. That's weird. And then you would have this would be powered right here. And you would have that like in your power. And it was hard when you wanted to get a 1960s car without power steering. You would be kind of like this. It would be like this. People are putting force onto the steering box, under the steering wheel, steer. But with your first ever power steering, you could steer the pencil that easily. It would look like this. There's a pencil and I would steer. They came out with those in 1950, and they were chased out. They had your linkage steering, which were actually a hydraulic cylinder that was tied, and then that would go back and forth, with flexible holding, so it would move easier and stuff. But if you were to get a car without power steering, you would know it, because you wouldn't be able to steer it unless you're moving. But now, when it's moving, it's not bad. You don't have to put enough brake on it. But if you were to drive a car without power steering, with power steering but a malfunctioning system, it would be harder to steer than with plain manual steering, because you have all those gears in your steering thing that is made for power, but you have to shift them manually. Just the same with this, and stuff like that. And if you had and then back to the inside of the car, and you have a battery too, which charge. In the olden days, they were charged by something called a generator, but now it's been replaced with an alternator. And then if you had and then that would charge your battery, and that would also fire when you started, it would fire up your starter too, which are now fired by ignition instead of a pedal. Like they used to have. They used to have a pedal and stuff before they had that daily crank engine. But since the modern cars, this is in here. Don't pay attention to this. This is in here. Stuff. You don't have. And then you have windows. A lot of the olden days they had regular crank windows, but then they started coming out with them maybe in the 1980s, 1990s. Maybe they started coming out with some standard. But this and stuff. and they first came out with airbags in the 1950s or 60s, but they never were put in cars really until late 1980s, early 1990s. 1980s, 1990s, we started coming out with airbags, dark side airbags. Then later, in the middle 1990s, they came with passenger airbags, and airbag system got enhanced. So if you were some truck would have a close to airbag shut off switch, if you didn't know that. Anyway, and then this is how, and then on the back you would have, a brake light which would activate with the brakes, and then you have your warning lights for the engine room. Those would be hooked into something in the engine, I'm not sure what, stuff like that. It would like this. And then what if you on the thing, like the lights are like your airbag lights, low oil lights, gas lights, brake fixing lights, engine service lights, power steering lights, stuff like that. And then if you either have for brakes in your car, you either have disc brakes all the way around, which disc looks like this, or drum brakes, which look like a drum. Of course, that's how they get the name. So, disc brakes are pushed by brake pads. It's one or more cylinders in them, or paddles, or I tend to not use. But it's made. It's made to help, and then pushes brake pads against the spinning brake disc with disc brakes underneath that. A drum brake. It would have the regular stuff. In the older cars, they never needed brakes on the wheels because it was brakes in the transmission. There'd be a disc inside the transmission that would brake your car's wheels, both of them at the same time. But of course, it still had that's where your emergency brake would be their parking brake. It's all called, but you never had park for your thing. You're supposed to apply that whenever you got out of the vehicle. But and stuff like a lot of times if it got corroded in there, they would be corroded and stuff. And as for your steering wheel and stuff like that, you would have your steering wheels, a single enough to post steering box for your pistons or something like that. And then you would have a lot of them now. A lot of newer cars would have telescopic steering, which would look like this. It would have like this, and then you would have it tilt up down too, like most older cars never had those. They had them. A lot of the buses would have steering up straight up, like this. And they never had it. A lot of the cars would have it like that. And you never needed power steering because you would be able to steer. But when the wheels got bigger, they started saying, what should I do? With no power steer, our wheels are getting bigger on our cars now. What do you think we should put power steering until once a person invented power steering? Those were often they were minor than they did now. They were either this or your steer box. Yeah. And then you have a lot of other stuff in the car. And stuff. Then you have down here, you have your and stuff. I'll just make it back up a little bit. And then you have your power. And then on the back, you would have your light, which would be hooked directly to your. It would be hooked to a diverter, which would split it in some point. That would go to your taillights and your headlights. And your headlight switch, by the way, was not on the steering column back in the old days. They were just a pedal you pushed on the floor. Over in the 1960s, 1970 models, maybe in the not. And then you start coming on your multi-shift lever. They never had multi-shift levers in the 60s. They just were injection levers. that would just look like this, nothing on it. That would go into your house. And if you had for your things back in the early, for your transmission, if you had manual, you would have a 3-speed column shift or a 4-shift. Column shifters were harder because they put them in the wrong gear too fast, they would lock up, and you would have to get out of there to tap your brakes down. You hit the shaft underneath it to make it go in here and stuck on one here and here. But now since they have, then you put it ahead and automatic. And then nowadays your multi-shift lever has your windshield wiper on it, your directional, the headlight dimmer, and the cruise. By the way, and then your cruise would be hooked right by where the throttle is, so that would keep it on. That would be hooked to it would go into a box where your cookie would also go into for your throttle. To keep the throttle open. So. And then you have your brake light up here. Right here would be your brake light. Then it would have these right here. Your tail light and your headlight. Overall, everything in a car is, if you look at everything in a car, you're saying, what it would be like to live 50 to 80 years ago. So, where you had never had all these options. You never had power steering, you never had power brakes, you never had power windows, you never had power locks. By the way, power locks are locked when you're power locks, you do that into that automatic, which you would have shifted. Anyway, you never had either any power steering, power brakes, automatic tranny, so they had to learn to live like that. Until trannies were automatics were invented in the 1940s. The power steering was invented, power brakes. And by the way, you would know this is what it would look like without power brakes. By the way, this is with power brakes. Here's your power brake booster, and here's this. And then you have and this would be your firewall right here. They call them firewalls because your carburetor oftentimes started on fire. So they had equipped it in there. They had equipped the power brakes. They had equipped the firewall to keep the fire from going in there. So the carburetor backfire would go. But then this is what it would look like without power brakes. Your reservoir would be hooked right there. And the reason that they invented double action, the dual brakes. They're called dual brakes because they had two things. One for the back, so it's called, if the back was off, you would still have the front was going. If the front was off, the back would still go. That would look like this. This would look like this. Here's just a single one, and then the other one's a longer, and then they would have a cover. Yeah. That's my mom and dad's on. My dad's going to bed. See, there's your car, and everything in the car is complex. And I bet you're glad you have all these safety options and stuff. Back in the older days, they never had airbags. They used the arm to help protecting the car accident. And they also had power brakes. They never had power steering or power brakes or automatic door locks or four-wheel drive, something like that. You teaching the class, buddy? That's my dad. Look it on the board.
Oh, okay.
And stuff. That's my dad.
Okay.
Anyway, look at that.
Yep.
It was straight pipe too. Straight pipe.
Alright.
That's what it was. Okay. Lovely. Then you have this. And then you would have the automatic. It would be an automatic. This is actually a pretty long video. 24 minutes. Almost 25 minutes really. And then on a lot of these older days they would have a big shift lever coming out of the floor. It would either be bented on top or it would be just straight. And those would hook up into the tranny to a hoop to help prevent dust and other debris from your car going into your transmission. And those would look like this. Right over here, you would have this. Would either look straight up like this, or it would look like this, curved like that, when hooked in the roof. And when they first came out four-wheel drive, it was in like maybe the 1980s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and stuff like that. They came out with that. You didn't have automatic transfer cases. You didn't have electronic transfer cases. So all you had is just a small lever, looks like the shift lever. It's smaller, so it's identification with a little box here that tells you in there. But back in the olden days, when they first came out with that, you didn't have a thing. It would have just a little indent on your metal by your thing that say, hey, this is two-wheel high and stuff. In the olden days, automatics were called hydromatic, and power steering was called power-assisted steering. And power brakes were called vacuum-assisted brakes. They needed something shorter, so they called power brakes and stuff. Yeah, so this is how your thing works and stuff. Then you have a lot of other features on the car, like automatic parallel parking now and stuff. And then you need a driver's license, which I don't have, so I never drive a car. And of course I can't, because I don't have a driver's license until I get mine. In the olden days, you never needed a driver's license. It was just for anyone to drive on a truck. Well, but then it came out with the law saying, yeah, there's been too many young drivers on the roads nowadays. We need a law. We need a law that says you need a driver's license. So no one could drive without a driver's license. They could sit in the passenger seat, but they could not go behind the wheel. So. And by the way, and then you had, in the olden days, like in the Mercedes-Benz and stuff like that, you had stuff that would shut off the fuel supply after a crash. And in the olden days they had a convertible. If you had a convertible, it would be a fabric roof. So if there's hailstorms, you would have to pray that stuff would fall into your car. Especially, now imagine if something unfortunate happened. It was hailing out. It was starting to storm out, and your motor died, and things can come up, and so you got pelted by hail. That would be not good. So, anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed my video. Let me give you a good tour. I'm using my camcorder, but it's bigger so I can sit on something. This is all my stuff, and if you didn't see all the stuff I drawn right here, stuff like that, right here. Anyway, woo! Yeah, please like and subscribe. I'm planning on making some other automotive things. I learned this in my car maintenance maintenance over at the high school right over there and stuff like that. I learned it. That's how I learned all this stuff. That's when I learned that your car needed a power brake system to make power brakes. I didn't know what that was for at the time. But then the instructor said, well, that big drum-looking thing in the back with your master cylinder, that's your power brakes. And I said, oh, stuff like that. And then, that little cap down there hooked to a pump, that's your power steering or something like that. The cruise control and stuff like that. I didn't know what that drum for your thing was at the time. So, and that's what you need. Without that, your stuff. And if you were to lose power, the vacuum for your thing, you'd still be able to brake, but you would have to push like this, or you would have to steer like this. That'd be bad if a car stalled in a wet thing, and there's cars coming up behind you and you couldn't get started, something like that. Then you'd be up a creek and stuff. Then you would have another one like that. Stuff like they would have, and I hope you had a cell phone. That's why a lot of people take cell phones with. So I hope you enjoyed my video. Thanks for watching.